I want to talk about some things that you should probably know before you move to Fort Lauderdale or before you even decide you want to move here. 13 of them to be exact. Let's get into it. All right, diving right in, number one is gonna be the weather. And believe it or not, yes, this is probably the biggest reason why most people move to Florida. And I actually recently just helped a client move here for this specific reason alone. They grew up in Chicago, they went to college in Miami, they've been back in Chicago for about 10 years, and they realized that they just can't do it anymore. They got spoiled by that Miami weather, and so they made a transition down here full time for the weather alone. But the thing about the weather is not that people are coming down here for the heat. They're actually coming down here for the season that we're in right now, which is fall and the mild winters. So with 250 plus days of sunshine a year, average temperature of about 70, 80 degrees, and stuff like this that's coming behind me right now, I mean, who could really argue that? And then of course, we obviously have the threat of hurricanes between June and November. But I mean, since I've been here for about 4.5 years now, we've only experienced a couple tropical storms. We actually just had one a couple days ago. Who knew it was coming? No, none of us knew, at least I didn't know, but the risk is still there. All right, number two is gonna be the culture and the lifestyle. And this is really gonna depend on which part of the metro area you live in. But Fort Lauderdale has grown so much, even just since I moved here, with much more of an arts and culture scene, a ton of new restaurants opening up all over the place. But to sum it up, the lifestyle here is active, very outdoors, focused around water, boating, and seafood. We are known as the Venice of America and the yachting capital of the world due to over 300 miles of inland canals and waterways, with over 150 of them being in the city alone, just like what you see behind me. And it's also one of the few places where you can actually find living coral reef less than 200 yards off the coast in Lauderdale by the Sea and Pompano Beach. So if you're a diver, that's pretty cool. Number three, where should you live? So I like to break down the metro area into 3 different sections, which is gonna be the beaches, the cities, and the suburbs. And which area you choose to live in is largely gonna depend on a couple things. Your commute, do you wanna live in an HOA community or non-HOA? Do you want a home with land? Do you wanna be in a good school district, which we'll talk about later? But I actually have a client that I helped relocate out from New Jersey down here, and originally they wanted to be 10 minutes from the beach. So we were looking, a couple months goes by, we finally find them a home in Imperial Point, 10 minutes from the beach. Well, after a year of living there, they realized that they didn't go to the beach as often as they thought they would, like most people who move out here. And she was actually going to school out in Davie, and while she was commuting to Davie every day, she realized that she actually really loved Davie, and she could be 30 minutes from the beach, still enjoy it the same amount of times that she already was, and her commute was a lot easier. So we sold her house in Imperial Point, found her a place in Davie. Now she gets to enjoy the best of both worlds. But more importantly than figuring out those areas that you really love is ruling out those areas that you absolutely hate, which is exactly why you gotta reach out to us. If you didn't know, I am a realtor here in Florida. I love making these videos, but I love even more to help you. So give us a call or text at any time. Go to the link in my description to book a Zoom call. We'd be happy to hear from you and see what we could do to help you. Number 4, let's talk about traffic and commuting. So overall, this area is pretty compact, but we really only do have 3 major highways that do run through this entire area, and then 2 more on the outskirts. So where you live in regards to where you're gonna be commuting to every day, if it's a commute, if it's far, that's gonna have an impact on where you live. Some of the highways are only toll roads. Maybe you don't wanna spend that money every day. Whereas your only other option would be to take the main roads, which could easily double your travel time. And then as far as public transportation goes, it's pretty good in the city when it comes to the busing system. It's halfway decent in the suburbs. The Bright Line train is a great option if you're traveling north or south, you're commuting to either West Palm Beach or Miami. And then there's always the option for Uber if you maybe don't move around too much, because that can tend to get a little bit pricey. But I will preface this by saying it would benefit you to own a car out here. It's not 100% necessary, but yes, it would benefit you. So let's say that you do own a car. Let's talk about car registration and insurance. To register your car is gonna be an initial $225 fee, but the biggest reason I wanna talk about this is to not make the same mistake that I made. And when you come out here, you have the DMV, and then you'll often see these places that just say auto tags on them. And I went to one of those places not realizing that that's a third party. And I wound up paying almost, it was over $600 to register my car, and then like $100 for vanity plates. It was ridiculous. It almost came out to about $700. So I just wanna let you know, just go to the DMV, don't go to one of those places. And then when it comes to car insurance, yes, Florida does have the highest car insurance in the country, because of the amount of claims, whether it's fraud or accident claims. You've definitely heard me speak about the drivers here before if you've watched my videos, but I have helped some people move out here who told me that their insurance actually didn't go up too much, but a majority of them it did. So that's just something to be aware of. And of course, it's gonna depend on the make and the model of your car, what kind of carrier you have, what kind of policy you have. So I really can't give you general numbers. This is like a game that we're playing trying to avoid the sun right now. Moving on, let's talk about everybody's favorite taxes. So yes, Florida has no state income tax. In order to qualify for this, you will have to be a resident here for 6 months or more. And then if you do own a property, there is something called the homestead exemption, which is basically a discount on your property taxes up to $50,000, but that helps a lot of people. Now, when it comes to property taxes, the property tax rate for the state of Florida is about 0.98%, but don't let that fool you, because in Broward County, it's 1.98% right now. And so one thing that often happens to a lot of people when they're looking at homes out here is they'll look at a home, let's say it's $700,000 and the property taxes show $3,500 a year. Well, that generally means that the property hasn't traded hands in quite some time. And when you go and buy that property and it gets reassessed, that number is gonna shoot up. So it's just something to keep in mind. Just don't get fooled by the previous property tax number if it doesn't seem like it adds up to that 1.98% number. Now, of course, if you live in a different town other than Fort Lauderdale, it could be a little bit less, it could be a little bit more, but that's the general number that you have to look out for. Number 8, the economy and the cost of living. So when it comes to jobs down here, Fort Lauderdale, South Florida in general, definitely thrives off the tourism, hospitality, and healthcare industry. You'll usually find an abundance of jobs in one of those categories, especially if you're living somewhere near a touristy area, whether it's bartending or working in a hotel or for a hotel or a restaurant, certain things like that. But the one thing to keep in mind is just that the salaries, they do tend to pay lower out here, especially when you're coming from a place like New York or California. Now, as far as the cost of living goes, Broward County is 114% compared to 100%, which is the US average. So yes, it is higher than the US average. But one thing I will tell you is that most of you that reach out to me and everybody that I've helped move out here, you're coming from very high cost of living states, tax burden states. So this is something where you don't want to just listen to what they say on the news or look at a headline that says the cost of living in Florida is sky high, because it's all about perspective. It's all about where you're coming from. I don't want to get too deep into this because this is a whole video on its own, but I'm going to leave a link in the description for a cost of living calculator so you can see where you're coming from. You can plug in your salary and see what you would have to make down here to maintain that same lifestyle. And so after cost of living, let's talk about cost of housing or housing opportunities. So despite what people think, there are options for all different types of budgets out here. It's just gonna depend on where you live and what type of housing you want. Typically, Fort Lauderdale will be more expensive the further east you go. The further west you go in the city, it does get more affordable. And then when you go out into the suburbs, your dollar does go a little bit further, but it's very area specific. I mean, you can go as far out as Weston or Parkland, and it's gonna still be very expensive to live there. And so I actually just did a video recently where I broke down the entire metro area, the different highways, the different areas, kind of what the cost of living is like in those areas. So I'm gonna leave that video linked up there. But yes, for that reason alone, it's very hard to give a general cost of living numbers, unless I'm doing an entire video on it, which will be coming soon. All right, number 10. HOA fees and assessments. So let's say you do want to live in the suburbs and you're going to be deciding whether you want to live in an HOA community. Is it right for you? Do you want to follow their rules? Do you want to pay the extra fees? And HOA fees typically cover things like amenities, common areas, sometimes Wi-Fi and cable, insurance on the building in some cases. And these fees can range all over the place from $100 to $1,000 depending on the community you're in, the amount of amenities, the type of amenities. And then if you're on the beach in a condo, you're looking at $1,000 to $2,000 a month. I mean, you got to figure they have to employ an entire staff that has to maintain that building. It just gets a lot higher. And then something else to be aware of if you are living in a condo, especially a high-rise condo, is these assessments. You know, ever since that building collapsed in Surfside, the condos have been raising their HOA fees in order to collect for future assessments in the case that they have to make future repairs. So this doesn't really matter if you are in a small condo building that has a $300 HOA fee. I just had a client recently who purchased a 2-bed, 1-bath in a small condo building with only a pool. Their HOA fee was about $350 a month, and then 1 year later it went up to about $750. So that's something that you have to pay attention to if you're interested in condos. All right, number 11, we're almost there. Everybody's favorite, homeowners insurance. And this has been one of the biggest headaches that people have been facing moving down to Florida, or people who already live here. And believe it or not, it really doesn't have anything to do with any hurricanes or anything like that. The amount of people moving here, fraudulent claims on the roof, carriers are leaving the state, carriers are refusing to reinsure their clients that they've had for years. You know, sometimes they're requesting certain things like the roof to be replaced, and it's just become a headache for a lot of people. And I actually helped 2 clients this year actually leave Florida, not because of insurance. They were already heading out of state. But one of them, their insurance carrier actually dropped them because their roof was over 15 years old. So they said, hey, you either need to replace your roof, get a whole new roof, or we're not insuring you next year. So that wasn't the reason that they left, but it was the final straw. And we're seeing that more and more. And the insurance thing, things keep changing pretty much weekly at this point. All right, so you want to be in a good area with schools. Well, unfortunately, as a whole, Florida is known not to have the best public school ratings, but that doesn't mean you won't find a great school out here. It just means for the amount of schools that they have, they aren't really rated the highest, or it could mean that, you know, one area has a really good elementary school, a 10 out of 10, but the middle school and high school are ranked lower, and the high school is really good, but the middle school is lower, and it's just kind of going to depend on what grade level your kid's in, what area you want to go to. But there are certain towns, mainly in the suburbs, where you will find 10 out of 10 schools across all grade levels, with those towns being Weston, Cooper City, and Parkland. There's also some really good private schools out here, like American Heritage and Plantation, which is, I believe, ranked #1 in the entire state of Florida. And then Pinecrest right here in Fort Lauderdale, which is in the top 10. And just FYI, these are not my opinions. These are ratings based off of websites like greatschools.org and niche.com. The question that everybody wants to know, is the Florida man real? No. What are people like down here? Well, it's a huge melting pot, and there's literally people from all over the world down here. So it's kind of hard to tell you what everybody's like. But one thing that I can tell you about Floridians, I guess we'll call them, people who live in Florida, no matter where they came from, is they can be very outspoken on their beliefs, whether it's politics, religion, or anything else. They're very outspoken. Not everybody, but a lot of them will be. People can also be very rude when it comes to driving. Now, you'll often hear people say, oh, everyone in Florida is really rude and there's a lot of mean people down here. And you know what? Yes, I run into the occasional rude person every now and then, but my experience here has been very good so far. I have met nothing but friendly people for the most part. I don't know if it's because I grew up in arguably the rudest area in the country, the New York City area.
Hey, I'm walking here. I'm really excited to...
Listen to me. We don't talk like that. We don't say things like that. You understand? Do you understand?
Okay, sorry. Forget about it. So basically,
I don't seem to have any bad experiences with people down here. Like I said, yeah, of course you're gonna run into them, but for the most part, I wanna say everybody's pretty friendly, but very outspoken. But this is very subjective. You know, if you're moving from somewhere like the rural Midwest or Virginia, just don't expect that type of hospitality down here. Basically, don't expect people to smile and wave at you for no reason. And that is 13 things that you need to know. I hope you got value from this video. If you did, we would love to hear from you and see what we can do to help you make a smooth move down to South Florida. Feel free to reach out to us at any time or go to the link in my description and book a Zoom call with me directly. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your weekend and we'll catch you on the next one.